Mr. Rector, I'm sorry, but I'm absolutely not bothered by what the opposition is saying here. The opposition didn't even come to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the victory over fascism, which we organized in Peszczani. Excuse me, it came so that it gave 20 krikunas for 50 euros, who were making a mess there. Can you imagine that you have a national celebration of the 80th anniversary of the victory over fascism, and the opposition doesn't come there? They don't even know where the freedom came from. They watch American movies. They feel that The Rescue of Soldier Ryan is the only movie about the Second World War, and that perhaps the liberation came from the West. The liberation of Slovakia came from the East. 60,000 soldiers of the Red Army died here. What's the point of me going and putting flowers on the grave of an unknown soldier? And most importantly, I met 2 of the 3 strongest men in the world in one day. I met the Chinese president, Mr. Xi Jinping, and the Russian president, Mr. Putin. Not to mention that there was another 100 million strong country, Vietnam, and there was the general secretary with whom I talked to on the communist side, and there was a huge country, global, very much from the south. There was the Brazilian president, Lula, whom I've known since 2003 or 2004, when I met him for the first time. Why should I be ashamed? Because I talked to these important people in Moscow? Because I put flowers on the grave of an unknown soldier for those 60,000 soldiers of the Red Army? Don't even go into this discussion. Why should I be ashamed? Tell me. We're getting to the point, and I realized it maybe later. In 2021, the Marquise TV broadcasted one shot in the news, where the editor asks the man, "Where should Fico be killed?" The man answers, "Yes, Fico should be killed." Can you imagine what kind of genocide the Marquise has unleashed on the Slovak Republic? You're doing the same thing. You're creating an image that it's not allowed. How is it not allowed? I'm the president of a sovereign government. And don't talk about it, Mr. Editor, that we clearly have a program of declaring a government, that our living space is in the European Union, but that we will make sovereign foreign policy for all 4 world parties. What do you think? That someone will stop me? I'm definitely going to Vietnam in the fall. I'm preparing a trip to Cuba. I can't rule out, as I did in the past, that Belarus will come as an economic contact. Now we have appointed Mr. Velislank to Belarus. I think we have to focus on all parties, and focus on countries that are not members of the EU, and on that, because there is the possibility of economic cooperation much higher and better than in the case of the EU itself. Our position is still the same. The use of military force, when it comes to Ukraine, we consider it a violation of international law, but we see the reasons why Russia took such an unprecedented step. Those reasons have been there since 2014, when pro-Russian activists and pro-Russian-oriented people were killed in Ukraine. Few people talk about what happened on May 2, 2014, when a huge number of pro-Russian demonstrators were burned in a building complex. They took off their masks and were burned there. Did you tell Vladimir Putin that it was a violation of international law? We talked to the public. I spoke about the example, and I asked constantly. We are now eye to eye because you spoke to him with 4 eyes. Mr. Editor, if you talk to someone with 4 eyes, it doesn't fit into the radio. We have positions that are generally known to the public. I spoke at the meeting with Mr. President Putin about the measures. I asked why there is no ceasefire. What is the problem? Why there can't be a 3-day or a 30-day ceasefire? I asked when it will end. What should we do so that we can contribute to this issue? I say the same thing at the meetings, that the measure is absolutely dominant for me. But I have to react to one more thing. This is the schizophrenia, the phallus of the Slovak opposition. Mr. Editor, if I accepted this philosophy that we cannot go to Moscow, because today there is a war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine, can we go to the United States and Great Britain? In the war in Iraq, Mr. Editor, which was a gross violation of international law, in the war in Iraq, which was based on lies, that weapons of mass destruction are in Iraq, that the regime is connected to the Al-Qaeda, nothing was confirmed. They were ordinary lies. 100,000 to 200,000 civilians died or were killed in Iraq by the forces that fought the Iraqi regime. So I ask again, how is it possible that our democratic, wise opposition is there? You can go to the United States, you can go to Great Britain, despite the fact that they threw bombs at Belgrade, the NATO troops, everything is fine. There are 200,000 dead civilians there. You cannot do that. Ask Mr. Shimachek. Call him. Let him tell you something. Wait. That is the problem of our opposition. Call the representative of Progressive Slovakia and ask him about the gas. I will be knocking for half an hour because I will not be able to say one single statement. They will not say what is happening with gas today, and they will not judge it either. So I will finish. I will finish. I reject the Parisians. Everywhere where international law is violated, I shout that international law is violated. In the case of Iraq, I decided to withdraw our soldiers from Iraq. In the case of Kosovo, we claim that Kosovo was created to negotiate with international law, but we do not recognize it. In the case of Russia, we claim that it is a violation of international law. Everywhere we see, of course, some reasons. We want peace, so I am not a phallus. If someone is a phallus, double-faced, then it is primarily the Slovak opposition, and I reject any statements of this type.
What do you think about the requirements for a referendum that would solve the cancellation of anti-Russian sanctions? Do you think there is a chance for such a referendum to succeed? How do you approach it?
Sanctions are like the sea, and I reject the sanctions policy because look at what they did to Cuba. Cuba did not harm anyone, Mr. Editor. Cuba only suffers because it is proud, courageous, and because it has its own opinions. And I ask you this question: how did you get hurt by the sanctions that often harm the European Union as such, the Russian Federation? I have visited the Russian Federation twice in the last 5 months. There are two things that you should never underestimate. The first thing is that President Putin has absolute trust in the public and absolute support of the whole country. The second thing you have to realize is that if the sanctions were aimed at stopping the production of goods to the Russian Federation, the Russian industry adapted very quickly and can produce what the sanctions forbid to import to their own country.
Do you support such a referendum?
I don't think I need a referendum. If there is such a referendum, I will support it. How would you characterize the current level, Mr. Prime Minister? Our duty is something else. Our duty is to say, and we want to achieve peace. Yesterday I watched I'm sorry when I heard again that we have to quickly accept a very large package of sanctions against Russia. For God's sake, now that the first signs of sanctions have finally appeared, at least an hour in the name of Zayak, and the sanctions will continue, then who wants war and who wants peace? How can we prepare a massive package of sanctions against the Russian Federation in time? This only confirms that the words I hear in the West are not absolutely true as long as people are interested in achieving peace. Now everyone is talking about peace. Where have they been so far? For example, 3 years ago, they left Ukraine and Russia in this war. I always said that we will see whether the sanctions will harm or not harm the Slovak Republic. If there are any sanctions that should harm the Slovak Republic, we will veto them.